the meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission, Thursday, April 9th, 2026, here in the Senior Community Center and on Zoom. Please note the meeting will be recorded, all city meetings. Start with roll call. Andrew Bernhardt.
Here.
Mark Sandrone.
Present.
Scott Clark. Here. Chris Fay.
Here.
Alan Markey.
Here.
Him on Zoom.
Yes, sound good.
Ed Normer.
Here.
And Richards.
Yeah, I'm here.
This is
Wow.
the historical thing.
Yeah, yes, the historical thing.
Thank you.
Chris Updell.
Here.
Where should I sit?
And the chair, that's me, the Faust is here as well. All right, and we do, since it looks like we have literally everybody here, so I think it's the first time it's happened for a while. Does that mean our two alternates are just here? Okay. So great. So first up, we have a demo delay, 5 Murphy Avenue. Rebecca is here for that. All right, if you could just come up anywhere and we'll take one of these front seats and give your name and address for the record and get started.
My name's Joe Knight. I live in 43 Coffin Street, West Newbury. I'm the owner of 5 Murphy Ave, an applicant asking for the commission's permission to demo the house and not impose a delay. So everything's uploaded. This house was built in 1947. So it's right on the cusp of being 79 years old, just beyond the 75-year mark. It's rather dilapidated. There's been tarps on the house for over 20 years. The inside is all moisture. I had a letter written from an engineer, going over the condition of the house, so it's not structurally sound. It's not built on a foundation. It's on blocks. There's one small crawl space underneath it. There's 2 iron beams that go across. They're all rusted and the floor is warping. And the house is just overall in not salvageable condition. So if you were trying to lift that house, it would just fall to pieces at this point. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, I just want to remind everyone and for folks in the audience as well that for the demo delays, what we first determined is to into which 3 categories it could fall the structure. It's not historically significant. It's historically significant but not considered for preservation, or it's historically significant and considered for preservation. And if and only if we determine that the last one is true, that it's historically significant and considered for preservation, then we hold a public hearing to review the proposed demo plans. I just wanted to explain that because we've had in the past, we didn't get to that point, and there were some folks here who wanted to speak out and weren't able to. And the reason that is basically because if we doesn't get to that point, it's no longer really something of our review because we don't consider it historically significant or worthy of preservation. So I guess first comments, questions from the board.
Yeah, if I can ask one question, so are you presenting any, or have you presented any plans for what you're going to replace this with?
I'm currently engaged architect Scott Brown. We're working on a couple of different options. We don't have a specific plan as of yet.
Is the new house going to have the same footprint, or is it going to be larger? Can you give us some sense of what?
I think we're leaning on building possibly a 6C, doing 2 smaller houses, or we'll do 1 single family house. It's kind of, the lot itself is 18,000 square feet, but there's a steep hill in the back, so depending on the amount of room that we have to meet setbacks and stuff like that, so. But as of right now, we really haven't, thought about it. So I just know the house needs to come down.
Yeah, I did drive by it and it's probably the worst one I've ever seen come before the commission there. It's really poor shape.
Yeah, the lack of maintenance for the last 20 years.
That will do it.
I do want to say that, you know, a lot of times we'll combine our first two votes and as far as historically significant and considered for preservation. I think, mostly in light of the condition, I think it would be best to vote just on the historical significance first. And, you know, from my understanding, we kind of looked at it as it's sort of not a guarantee, but the fact that 75 years old is one of the defining characters of that. If anyone wants to make a motion that the structure at 5 Murphy Avenue is historically significant, take that motion.
I'll make the motion that.
I'll second the motion.
Historically significant.
Mark Sandro.
Okay, thank you. All right, and remind me again, who are alternates now? Is it Ed?
No, I think it's Scott and
Scott and,
Alan Markey.
Okay. All right, any other questions before I take a vote on the motion? No? All right, the motion is a structure at 5 Murphy Avenue is historically significant. Andrew Bernhardt,
Yes.
Mark Sandro,
No.
Scott Clark, no, Chris Fay,
Yes.
Ed Normer,
Yes.
Glenn Richards,
Yes.
Chris Hotel,
Yes.
and chair votes yes as well. So was that 6-1? Motion passes. So I guess we now need to consider for preservation. I want to say that you know, the considered for preservation really isn't a threshold vote. We're not deciding whether the building will be demolished or not. It's really just evaluating, you know, is it worth our commission's full review? But I'll take any more conversation, questions on it.
I tempted to reluctantly propose a motion that it's not considered for preservation on the grounds that it's just unsalvageable.
Do we need to write that in the positive?
Oh, okay.
Before we do that, though,
Yeah.
I drove by it today as well.
Yeah.
Twice.
And
No, it's sadly, it's not. I looked at the pictures, I looked at the outside, doesn't appear to be salvageable. However, because this is in the same neighborhood that we went round and round on
Yeah.
Norman Avenue.
sure.
And while you clearly can't push backwards into that bluff, like they did on Norman Avenue. We did talk about the context of the neighborhood being part of a pretty clearly like just after World War II neighborhood, with historical value to the city. So I would wanna have some sense of what's gonna go there. If it's too small, you're talking about 2 small houses, potentially 2 small houses side by side.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a special permit. I don't know if we do that. It's just there's options that we can do. You know, that we can apply for. It doesn't mean the planning board or anything would approve it, but that is one of the options. I think we probably encourage or keeping it as a single family unit, just one house on it, just based on the lot. But again, we're, you know, kind of trying to work through the plans.
We worked on that with the builder on Norman Avenue to get it down to a scale that I think actually works in the neighborhood. This is, you know, it's obviously it's not inhabitable. To see something like shooting straight up in the air or whatever, 2.5 stories, and I understand you're a business person, but then also at the same time, there goes another somewhat affordable house potentially, you know, in Newburyport. So I'd like to get some sense of what's gonna replace this. No problem with the tear down on this one.
Yeah, so the house itself is about 1,700 square feet, and then you had a garage that was falling in on itself. So we cleaned that up. So if we were to put something back, I would say it would probably be about 2,200 square feet.
Yeah. I mean, I thought about this too, Chris, and I think that the only conclusion I came to, and I could be wrong, so I'll correct that we may have to, like when you go to the ZBA for whatever you end up doing, there's chances are pretty good they'll see them about something, whether it's a variance or whatever, and have them, try to exercise some control on, or, maybe that we can give them some sense of what we did at the 14 Norman Ave and try to, work with, through them and with the architect and to get something that's not going to totally, spoil the neighborhood.
I think what we're saying really, what I'm hearing is it's like, it's neighborhood context is really important. And one of the things when we evaluate using Secretary of Interior standards is like, does this affect the streetscape? Does this affect, the neighborhood character? And some of the other homes that we've seen on that block, we came to the conclusion that they were, historically significant, and that process ended up, I think, in resulting in something that most neighborhoods feels good about. But we do need to really look at it just as, from a Secretary of Interior standards point of view, not are they gonna make more money or less money or whatever, it's, it's more the scaling and sizing of appropriateness, if we do think it should be considered for preservation, but. Did you have something? You look like you did, sorry.
No, I was just thinking, I mean, yeah, I've looked through everything on in the packet there and as much as I hate to say it, that house is, it's cooked. But the context of the neighborhood, obviously, like Chris here said, is very important to that whatever's going in there is, we're taking down something that's actually historically significant. So the process, at least, that what's going in there is not going to have any adverse effects. So it would fit more into the neighborhood than not. Once then said it's a shame that has to come down, but it's going to have to. So I think the only next thing we can do is to advise on what would be going there afterwards to be able to preserve the streetscape.
Any other comments, questions from the board? No? Well, someone would like to make a motion, since we do need to phrase it in the positive, that motion that the structure at 5 Murphy Avenue should be considered for preservation.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that.
Okay. And that second? Anyone?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so the motion is that the structure at 5 Murphy Avenue should be considered for preservation. Andrew?
No.
Mark Sandrell?
No.
Chris Fay?
I'm gonna, just for that reason, I'm gonna vote yes, just so we can have some say, even if it's an advisory letter. I'll vote yes.
You? Ed Normer?
No.
Glenn Richards?
No,
Chris Hartel?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So we got 3 to 4, so that measure does not pass. So it is not to be considered for preservation. That does mean that we will not have a public comment period. And we're all set with us. Like I said, it's to that.
You get to tear it down.
Yeah. Like, what's going on here?
Thank you.
All right.
Can't believe it was changed, right?
Yeah, it's like, right, yeah, I was waiting for everything.
Thank you.
All right.
Good job.
Alright, next. Next up is a modification to 26 Oakland Street.
I'm not, you know,
And if you can just, for the record, give your name and address.
I'm Tony Finocchiaro, 17 Bremer Lane in Hampton Falls, New Hampshire. I do have some handouts if you want to pass them along, but for today, this is a minor modification request for some of the windows that we'd like to make changes to. Let's see what we have here. So on this first slide.
Hey, just one second, I just want to remind, because some of you all weren't here for this. This is, we'd already approved some minor changes to this home. They need to make some changes to what we've already approved.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
If ours confuse you, ours were replacements of existing windows that are just today that were approved. In this view, what we're asking for and proposing is that if you look here under the porch, we are asking to take the existing window and vertically shrink it. Because in that area, there's gonna be a kitchen. And in order to make that kitchen work and the countertop work, we need to lift that window. So we don't want to delete the window, we don't want to remove it, we simply want to raise it up. So we can make that kitchen function and utilize that wall. So that's the ask on this page. So we can keep going. We went through zoning and we showed these plans as well. This is actually a request from zoning. We showed this in the original plans, but zoning asked that we take this window in the new addition and relocate it to align with the existing window below. We were asked to do that by zoning. We said we thought it might challenge the look, and they said we'd like you to move that window, and we agreed with zoning.
One question I know we looked at before, but when they said they want it aligned with that window below, do they want the left edge of that larger window
Yes,
aligned
sir.
with the left edge of the
Yes,
lower
sir.
one?
So, yeah, exactly. So you would see this left edge here. This is approximately 18 inches of
Okay.
shift to the left.
Okay.
That is a zoning request that we do that. As Scott said, but we're really, because we really want to get this family moved in.
Yeah.
This house feeds, if you know 26 Oakland Street, it's
Yeah.
a wet house.
Yeah.
So
You know,
we said, we need to seal it up. So we said, okay.
if by any chance you suggest moving the first floor window over a little bit.
Well, because we already approved it with historical and we did.
I- yeah,
it turned
can of
into-
worms.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. So that can of worms is something we're hoping to avoid. So that, you go to the next one.
I'm just, what was their reasoning?
They felt that it was more aesthetically pleasing to the eye. We had opinions that were different, but again, we didn't want to challenge that. I think we had already reviewed this one, so it's the next one. Okay, so what you can see here is the Italian 8 style. Beautiful home, so we decided to, in the addition, we have this window pattern here. What we wanted to do below, you can see here that the house pretty much has the 2-1 window pattern throughout. This is existing. This is gonna become a bathroom though. So we felt was to just give the homeowners privacy, because the neighbor is literally right here. We would change the windows so that literally the shower, and it would not give them any exposure, literally, to the neighbor. But in order to respect the home and to kind of be consistent with the rest of the house above in the new addition, we would emulate that same 2-1 pattern that's throughout the rest of the home, the existing home. So that's what we're suggesting here, is that we're modifying this. And we are 2-1 pattern here in the bedroom.
What had you showed us before on this elevation that we had approved? I was trying to remember.
I think we were talking at the time about the addition. And there was 2 windows, like there was just 2 windows that we put in place here, but we had. I think at the time, the original one, this was still here.
Oh, okay.
Beth, I think we weren't quite resolved yet on this piece of it. And so this kind of the back here is now what we're proposing to be because that is right up in the neighborhood, that gives that bathroom privacy, but also emulates the rest of the house in the way the window times work.
Is it an illusion or those windows look smaller, like even the ones on the second floor?
Yeah, they are slightly smaller, I think. The dimension might actually be more readable there. Because it's a bedroom, we were trying to keep it up a little bit higher for furniture and beds and things. It's small, it's gonna be a small bedroom. It might be 20 by 30.
Yeah, 20 by
I believe
38.
times two, yeah, altogether 20 by 38s.
Yeah.
And a single 20 by 38 here.
Yeah.
But again, we wanted to at least emulate the pattern because the rest of the house is that way originally. So we're hoping to do that, so we didn't really, we wanted to move what was there.
And was there any change on the page before? Did I miss something, or is there no change on that?
And that one, we had already, I believe we had already reviewed.
So nothing new on that, this was the left side elevation, nothing new on that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was approved by zoning, that's right, so we had, I'm sorry, this window here. Sorry, guys, this window here. This wall is the living room wall. And they wanted a place, because of the way the living room works, they asked that they could use this for the TV and some type of entertainment system, so. That's right, we were gonna take the existing window and delete that window. There was a proposal to zoning to move it. And that's right, they didn't wanna have that because they felt it would be coming into kind of like view of this post. And so we said, okay, so we went back to zoning, they approved this. Just deletion.
Oh, okay. So what you've got here is basically what they've approved
Yes,
and.
yeah, this is approved by zoning.
And is this any different than what we had okay the first time around, I think?
There was that window
There was, yeah.
the first time, yeah.
Okay.
So it's essentially that window. The window that is on that same side, but you can't see it in this view,
Yeah,
right there,
Yeah, so this street here.
and then the ones on the
And then
back.
one in the back, yeah. that's right.
I have a question. I've never yet to have to vote on what zoning is changed.
Well,
Is that different?
well, it's that, what we had approved, the plans that we had approved before have changed, so we need to vote on approving what he now has.
But do we have to approve what zoning has approved? That's what I'm saying. That's where
Oh,
I'm very.
like, can we tell them, no, no, the window should be there?
Well, no, I'm just saying it's not our authority. I don't know.
If we could just to clarify,
Yeah.
effectively that becomes the applicant's responsibility to reconcile these two before being able to do the work. That's, you know, so
Oh, so.
if you're, and this happens periodically between planning board and ZBA or historic
Right.
commission and ZBA, that kind of thing. So effectively, the applicant has to reconcile the two things so the plans are consistent.
Okay, it's the
But
first
this is
time.
unique, this doesn't happen often.
Very unique.
Yep.
It's
Yeah,
never
I-
happened to me.
It was interesting to see that they had such an opinion about that particular window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate, just, I mean, as context is from my perspective, it's an unfortunate situation for applicants to sometimes be in, regardless of the details, where two different boards might have different expectations, or there being the applicants being bounced between them over a period of weeks. And doesn't necessarily know where everybody's gonna land up, you know, it's unfortunate, but it's sometimes inherently part of the permit process, you know, not just here, but elsewhere in different instances.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Just one real quick, you pointed out that on that window, you're making it smaller because it's a bathroom and neighborhood close. How far is it to the next structure over?
This is the driveway, and that's approximately 20 feet across from the back of the house, maybe 22 feet to the side.
So roughly 20,
Yeah,
25
that's kind of
feet,
their
somewhere
living
there.
room right there looking right ahead.
Yeah, okay, sounds so much nicer.
Well, we can, I would take, motion to approve the revised plans.
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
As presented.
So I'll second it.
All right, thank you. All right, so the motion is to approve the revised plan for the structure at 26 Oakland. Andrew,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
um. Chris Fay,
Yes.
Ed Neumer,
Yes.
Glenn Richards,
Yes.
Chris Huntell,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well, so that motion passes and you're all set.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great day. We're gonna fix it up nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It needs it.
Yeah, she's, yeah. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
I will,
Okay.
application. Says the justification.
You have some, you wanna break something up? You can.
Yeah, I really should have been brought up for 5 Murphy Ave. But this is more for the commissioners and not really for the applicant. The applicant made a couple of big mistakes on this. When they had the justification for the demolition, did you read through it? You want to read through it? There's a couple of things I pointed out. One of the things he said was, it does not represent a significant example of historic style construction
Right.
or researches, and it was historically significant. They talk about 5 Norman Ave. It was, so that was wrong.
Yeah.
Second part was establishing a clear precedent for the removal of similarly
Yeah.
aged interior structures.
Yeah.
We're not a court of law, we're the historic commission, we don't set precedents.
Yeah.
Every hearing that we have is based on the merit of that hearing. So somebody going out saying that, well, they set a precedent on this, that means we could start, it's like, no, that's
Yeah.
not the case whatsoever. So in reading this, don't think for a second that this holds any water, because it doesn't.
Yeah, I did notice that, and just kind of wrote it off as BS.
Well, he showed the house next door, the big house, and that's that president. Well,
Yeah.
that was kind of my concern, it'd be another one of
Well,
those.
and sometimes I've noticed when they talk about ridgeline heights,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of them that they're including are these new builds that are, 2.5 stories, so it's like,
Right.
let's see, we're comparatively to the stuff that was done. All right. Thanks for bringing that up, that,
But Chris, why didn't you say something that
Well,
didn't want
I should have.
didn't want a contentious?
I did, well. I should have. I really should.
No, I wasn't trying to, I wasn't.
But
trying
it was, this
What
is,
would have been the benefit?
yeah, this is mostly geared towards the commissioners to understand that,
Yeah.
like. When you see these applications come in, take a look at them, and if something doesn't look right, it probably isn't.
Well, there wasn't much history on the historic side of it either, and we typically they go through a process that we didn't have. And they're showing the records of sale, who owned it, and we didn't do any of that work.
yeah,
No, none of that was there.
But that's, again, it goes back to, because we've had this conversation before, they came in expecting us to approve it to be torn down because of the condition.
The
Right.
condition.
And they didn't take the next step, which is, this is what we plan on doing. We could have imposed a demolition delay, we didn't do that. So partly, by the time the vote gets to Chris, the vote's over,
Right.
right? So maybe, I don't know, I won't speak for yourself, but at that point, it's a moot point to read the thing. I just find it interesting, I wasn't here when the guy got angry recently, but I also remember when Norman Avenue came up, there were people that came in to tell us that we had no right to do certain things with private property, and I don't know if that's pardon my, like I live here, I can do what I want type of thing, but we
Yeah.
clearly have the authority to do what we can do, and, we, the vote didn't go that way tonight, but I find it interesting that this neighborhood is at least somehow, some way brought up two sort of somewhat contentious letters.
well, I think it is.
Bulletins.
I think it is, we had talked about, I think when one of these came up, about the need to get Form Bs or something on all these homes that are just hitting the 75-year mark. And I was hoping that we could push through this 50-year change, which would mean a whole bunch of other buildings would need that. So that we have something to at least start with, where they're like, my whole neighborhood right over here, we've lost 3 or 4 buildings literally in the last year. There was 2 being torn down at the same time the other day. and they're all like 1950s.
That whole neighborhood will be gone at some point, because why wouldn't you sell? You know, it's not that it has to be so dilapidated, right? They'll just say nothing significant. No, George Washington didn't sleep here. They'll come up the hill. I don't know if that's where you live, but they'll come up that sort of hill next to the school. There's just limited sort of real, it's interesting. I was out walking yesterday and there were two people, don't know who they were, two guys out at the tannery. I was sitting outside talking about. They want to move it to 50 years. I don't know if they were talking about us on the city council, or they were on the city council, but they were clearly having a discussion about
Interesting.
demolition delays.
That's,
That was the only.
For anyone
Talk
that-
about that.
that missed it, that was in planning and development on Tuesday.
Yeah.
That whole
Maybe that's what
discussion,
they were
and, it's still in committee, it hasn't.
Yeah.
You know, gone through it, but it kind of seems to me, and this is just my own personal opinion, it kind of seems to me that developers are weighing in extra heavy on this because of just how various people on the committees and councilors worded questions. And in the first meeting, we had 11 people that were from Preservation Trust and Historical Commission, the first one. And then there were, I think, 2 or 3 developers and 1 real estate agent. So we clearly had the majority, but for some reason, it was kind of like, the discussion was like, why is this even, going on? Why are we even discussing this kind of thing? Just kind of, it's my opinion, I took away from it.
Was there an election of the officers held for this year?
Yes, there was.
Oh, I missed it.
Yeah, you're
We,
right.
we tried, we actually, I pushed it off a couple of times. We were trying to get a fuller body here, but. Certainly want you guys to go on. I,
Gets
Yeah.
reelected.
yeah,
Excellent.
nobody was pushing us out of the way for some reason.
Good question. So it's not a requirement to show the proposed replacement house.
I
That
was
kind of surprised me.
we were just having this conversation because I was curious as to what would happen if we had voted, that it was considered for preservation, at which point we would normally see the plans, but if they have no plans, we would have to, essentially vote whether we consider it for preservation without seeing anything.
Yeah.
But we would impose a demolition delay.
Well, but not until unless we said it also was preferably preserved without seeing the plans.
Well,
So
well, actually, the plans were supposed to say the demolition plans, which would be, complete demolition. You'll end up with, that's like that's the demolition plan.
Yeah,
So there'll be nothing left. Maybe it was, and the thought occurred to me that maybe it was sort of intentional to
So, I mean,
avoid getting embroiled in a whole
Yeah,
thing about the
absolutely.
design or
Absolutely.
replacement.
I
so, I
forgot.
mean, based on what we just did, can this builder put up pretty much so they could put up
Within the
Within the-
requirements of the
Right.
design, ZBA.
Right.
The
with
ZBA.
CEA, but I mean, it could be.
well, no, would be no historic,
Right. I mean, there's a part of me, I
Wait.
love modern architecture, but I mean, you could put up something, with flat roofs and. I mean, you could, which is, I actually kind of like that type of architecture,
Yeah.
but
Good.
in and of itself, we're sort of, he's got like wide open spaces to do whatever he wants now, right?
Just within the zoning requirement.
Right, but
We have.
But
no
we,
more
we
say.
historically will
style-wise.
say, we frown on crappy vinyl siding and, you name it, but I mean, we've kind of left it open, right?
yeah, but.
I just wanted to offer one because having seen the permitting process for years, ran discussion here, and I was just, it occurred to me to think of 18 Highland, which came up relatively recently. I feel like there might be, it's not an uncommon pattern for discussion, but I just wanted to flag it because it'll come up routinely. The ordinance here focuses on the existing structure, right? Your evaluation, before you get to any kind of plan review, is all about the existing structure, and I know there's gonna be a desire to look at what's happening in the future. Unfortunately, or however you look at it, unfortunately, you don't have that jurisdiction over those areas, and so they might be of various concern. But the question is, is that already covered in zoning or some other area? That's how it's addressed, essentially, whether we like that or not, we want to change it or not, that's a discussion to have with councils about changing ordinances. But it is worth noting and understanding, even though it comes with difficulty, I think, for some of you, that your initial jurisdiction is only determination relative to the existing structure, and you're really only looking at the future conditions of that thing. If they're coming back, to say, we propose a delay, we're either now or in the future, coming back to show you some plans to review. Also, if they wait out the delay, then you're not having anything come before you, right? And if they try to act on that. So again, unfortunately, this goes back a little bit parallel to what I saw in 18 Highland, which is that there was some, understanding there might be some desire to look at the future character of what's gonna happen there. But that jurisdiction essentially was left with the planning board, and who in that case had the zoning permitting and all the design review that might come with that.
But we could have imposed a demolition delay tonight or not.
Yes, we
Yeah, we could. You could have, yeah.
Yeah, but that would not have changed what happened in the future.
Well, they could wait out the
They could
year.
wait it out.
They can wait it out, but they
Or-
still can do whatever they want.
Right.
When do we go to the 2 years?
Well, that's if it gets passed.
Oh, then I'm
Yeah,
done.
yeah, no, that's-
I would just say this, it doesn't, and I know that the house is in disrepair and the guy's sitting in front of us, it doesn't cost us anything
Yeah, I know.
to impose a demolition delay. Because if he's in a hurry, he'll be back in 2 weeks. And to think that he brought the architect, but there's nothing, not even any initial drawings from planning to discussion, that seems a little suspect, right?
Can I butt in here, guys?
Rolling the dice.
Yeah.
He was surprised that we said go.
But are we still at what Andrew was talking about? We're not supposed to decide what's in there in the future at this point. Can we send a letter to the planning board or to the zoning board and saying, we can't really stop them from tearing this down because it's not you can't salvage it. However, we're still concerned about, what's gonna go there in the future.
Yeah, this is going to, that's kind of the comment I made earlier when that was on when we were discussing that agenda item, that it's kind of hopefully he'll have to come for the ZBA for something, he may not technically if he does everything
If it's
right.
compliant, yeah, and you can communicate to any other board advisory comments, even though the ordinance calls out specific cases where you have to do that, or expected to do that.
Right.
You can also decide at any given point, like, these are comments we want to give to such and such board, because we think they might want to have it.
My assumption is that we would do it as an individual, or it sounds like you're saying we could, if we wanted to, have something by the
We can make a
board.
motion to have me write it or something.
Yeah, motion to authorize the chair to write,
Yeah,
something,
okay.
describe whatever the substance is, that way you're authorized.
Or authorize you to write it.
Because it winds up definitely confusing what we're supposed to be doing, because we're not really, I think Andrew brought it up, right? We're not supposed to be deciding what's there in the future. We're supposed to look at the structure that's there and everything involved with that particular structure.
Well, and I think in these cases, it really, it is when it helps, for me, why I voted yes was not just to see the plans, but because I think the building as it should be considered for preservation. Like, it would be really nice if we could preserve it. Like that, because of what it is in its, like, in the neighborhood, on the street, in the context, the social context of it, I think that's where it has its merits. And then, okay, well, replacing it or like fixing it might not be an option, but now let's look at what is gonna replace it. And I think that's the only way we can do that, is if we come to that conclusion. And I think with structures like this, it's difficult because it's not that special or whatever of a home, and it's so badly deteriorated that it's hard to see what's worthy of saving, I guess, but I don't know, I still think that the goal maybe should be to look at these ordinances to make this process more streamlined, or more like, do we save the house or not? Because I think the whole considered for preservation and properly preserved thing gets messed up so much that it would be nice to make that process different for us.
Are you gonna do the flow chart?
Yeah, I was gonna speak to it,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So, like, can I just ask, if I'm a developer and I wanna come in and tear down a house, you know, if I can do it without having to show what I'm gonna put up. If I wanna sort of keep that under my own wraps, that's exactly what this guy's doing, right? And so it almost makes me wonder, why do other developers request a demo and then open themselves up for criticism by putting their designs out there for us to see?
Yeah, I think I can answer that, like, because an example is the one by the Chain Bridge, where the answer is like, in this case, he knew the place was a wreck. There really wasn't much, it wasn't, but there was one near the Chain Bridge that he wanted to do the same thing, complete demo, didn't have any new plans, right? But the difference there was, that was a really old house that had significant owners and all that, so we imposed a demo delay. But he said, okay, I'll wait it out.
Wait it out, yeah, that's
Um,
Doug Sheriff, that's
Yeah,
the 5-house deal.
yeah, exactly. So that was the difference there.
Yeah.
In this case, I mean, there really wasn't much, there wasn't really anything to save,
Yeah.
It's not like he wanted to put an addition or a second floor or something.
Yeah, it's an interesting strategy.
Yeah,
Can we write a letter, though?
sure.
We express, like, I'd like to make a motion that to authorize the chair to write a letter. I guess expressing our concern or our desire to see something that's contextual to the neighborhood.
Do you want
Simple enough.
Sure, should we do it as a draft so that I can
That'd be
bring
great.
it back to the next one and you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, and I agree with Chris's concern. The main thing is that we can't determine the style or anything like that, but something that will hopefully have the least impact on that whole community neighborhood vibe there,
Like Norman Avenue.
Because when I drove up Norman Ave, like the house that we didn't have any control over, it's like a monster.
Right.
And the one where we did work with the developer, it's still big, but it's nowhere near as disruptive. So, it can be done.
It's what I tried to, when I went for public comment on Tuesday, and then I tried to convey that these demo delays almost all the time are a negotiating
Right.
kind of tool, not
Right.
You're stop, you can't do anything.
Right.
It's like, let's figure out what's the best for the community.
Yeah.
Which is what we're supposed to be doing, but yeah.
Well, if I could just also then play devil's advocate, it's like, neighborhoods change, right? And, I guarantee you High Street didn't start off with, these giant houses on it. It probably started off with little shacks in the early 1800s. And so I struggle with that, right? Like, things do evolve. The average house size in the United States isn't 1,300 square feet, it's 2,300 square feet. And so how do you reconcile that? I'm not asking for an answer, I'm just
To
saying.
quote Malcolm, you move to North, I'll paraphrase, you move to North Andover. Because we do have as a commission, we have a responsibility to, as an advisory group, to make sure that the whole place isn't demolished in a sense. And I think as a resident of Newburyport, I believe you have a bit of a social contract. You move here with an understanding that you take down
The standards.
houses on High Street, right? Regardless of when they were built, perhaps, or whatever else it is. I just worry again about the neighborhoods, and I do find as a history teacher, this letter that there's nothing historically significant about the house or the neighborhood. It was built in 1947. I'm pretty sure they didn't sell it to some random 60-year-old at the time. They sold it to a GI. We learned that on Norman Avenue. It was right there. We got the story. The guy that built the house, tore it down, was mad that Glenn and I had talked to the widow. And we had found out the guy was a veteran. And then we saw the ship. I looked up, just like,
Yeah, the model, yeah.
like, this is significant. We can't at the one point say like, we lost my train of thought, but like, we can't say we respect what these guys did in the war, but after the war is over, whatever.
Yeah.
The whole thing raised, the ships, the GI Bill, all that construction changed everything for those guys, and thus it changed everything for a lot of our lives. there's absolutely historically significance to those neighborhoods and those houses. They just don't wow you.
Yeah,
So if you wanna be wowed, you gotta walk down.
Well, and I also-
That's not this whole city.
and I also think too, it's like if you wait long enough, people might be wowed by the stuff we're not currently want to find.
What's wowing about those houses, is they are so simple.
Yeah.
To me, it is they are so simple. And livable.
Chris, did you have something?
No, I was just gonna, to state quick, the job description of the Historical Commission for preservation, protection, and development of the historical or archaeological assets of such city or town. Preservation and protection. It's here. This is what we do. We don't have to worry about, way out deep down Turkey Hill Road if they're gonna build a new development down there, because they're not taking down any of the historical houses here. Doing, doing something brand new out there, but what's here now, is a wide variety of architecture and historic homes, whether, the architectural style or how they're engineered or whatnot, or whatever, whatever basis on the standards you want to go by, but I understand, to your comment that, neighborhoods, they do develop. It comes to a point, it's like, when are we gonna draw the line when there's 10 of these houses left?
Yeah.
Or 5 or 1?
Yeah, well, that's.
Or try to keep the ones that are here now, because eventually those are gonna go one by one. Maybe in the future, maybe they're gonna burn down or whatever, so we try to protect what's here now. Was my thought.
All right, well. Let's not belabor this anymore. Do you want to make a motion?
I did.
Yeah, I think you did.
I'd like to make a motion that to authorize the chair to draft a letter. To the ZBA,
Yeah.
to the appropriate authorities.
There's no proposal yet, so they don't have any kind of permitting, what they're doing, they're not sure yet.
We'll be ahead of the game. We'll have
Okay.
something drafted, and that's why, so you got plenty of time there.
The new house be historically, contextually.
All right,
Compatible with the neighborhood.
Yeah, I'll second it, that whatever they put in, sort of minimize its adverse impact on the neighborhood. Context, I think is the word I'm looking for.
All right, so
But I'm sorry, I mean, as pointed out by Andy, that is not our purview.
No, it's
That
not.
is not what we are
Yeah,
asked
well-
to do. We're asked to evaluate the building there.
Mhm.
Whatever happens after that is out of our control. So we can write many letters and express our opinions. That has no bearing on what's gonna happen down the road.
That's true, that doesn't carry
So I
the
think-
authority.
This is a waste of time.
Maybe,
Well, I made a motion. Has it been seconded?
yeah. I
you second, okay. So, all right, the motion is that I, the chair, will write a. What do we call it?
Suggestion,
Somebody help me with the word.
opinion.
Draft a letter.
Draft a letter. To the ZBA. Okay, Andrew Bernhardt,
Yes.
all right. Well, damn. Mark Sandro,
Yes.
Chris Fay,
Yes.
Ed Neumer,
Yes.
Ben Richards,
Yes.
Chris Hotel.
Yeah.
And I'll vote yea.
And you're right, it doesn't have any actual authority, but,
It just reflects.
We have
our lack
a
of power.
minutes.
well, that too, and I didn't think of that, but that's right.
Anyone have any changes, comments about the minutes? Anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes of March 26th?
I'll make that one.
Okay, thank you. And are you seconding?
No, I wasn't there,
Oh, you weren't there, okay,
Outside.
okay.
so I'm kind of out of the picture on this one.
All right, a motion to approve the minutes of, what are they, March 26th?
Yeah.
Andrew,
I was absent.
okay,
Same here. Mark.
okay. Uh-oh. I guess we can do,
The alternates.
yeah, we can do our alternates then. Alan?
Yes.
All right, thank you. See you, and Scott?
Yep.
All right, and then how about Chris Fay?
Yes.
Ed Neumer?
Yes.
And Glenn, you said
I was
you're
absent.
absent, and then Chris,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. The motion to approve minutes is passed. Any other comments? Anything from? Fay?
If I could,
Yes, please.
so just, as Caitlin, I think was alluding to, we have the, as you were talking about earlier, the amendment in the council right now. And so one of the things that we thought would be helpful, I should have, want to pass these down. These are flow charts that would represent the new process if the amendment goes through. One of the things, regardless of the policy choice, I'm just gonna throw the graphic up on the screen briefly. So looking at this, okay, so in looking, what was the chart? Okay, so this is your existing flow chart, right? And don't worry, you don't have to read through this all like right this moment, right? But just we want to make sure you have a hard copy you can take with you. So with these changes that are proposed, so it is on the city council, it's under the city council right now. It's on their page. If you go to the planning development meeting from this week, actually on Tuesday night, you can kind of see the attachments there, and some of them relate to other matters entirely, but some of them are directly on this. So key thing here, I guess, for your purposes is, aside from how many years back we go in the calendar, right? That was part of the initial proposal. I guess that part has been removed or retracted from the proposed amendment. There is still the proposal to go from 1 year to 2 years, as opposed to going to 1 year from 1 year to 3 years, as was originally sponsored. But all that aside, which is like the bigger policy level stuff, the main thing I think I wanted to just call out here and flag for your attention anyways, we're hoping that irrespective of that policy level detail on historic preservation and what sort of thresholds are used for each of these things, that the council, if there's anything happening there, that at least don't throw out the baby with the bathwater for something like the procedural cleanup that we're trying to do here, which is making your voting process a lot easier and clearer every time going forward. At least in the time that I've been here, I've always seen this commission have difficulty, I think for good reason, with this section of the ordinance, because I wasn't here at the time, and with all due respect to those who worked on it, it's not written very well. And I think that it's a clunky procedural thing that is sort of circular and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And the one thing the best example of that I think is right out of the gates, the fact that the ordinance defines what is a historically significant structure. And then the first step you're expected to vote on is whether it's historically significant. It's a little nonsensical, frankly. So at the end of the day, the idea here is to take your flow chart, which has this step 1A and step 1B, which is I'll just kind of. So in your first step where you're determining whether that's historically significant or considered for preservation, you don't really need to determine whether it's historically significant. It's already before you for that, right? So the real question for you has always been whether or not you're imposing the delay, and then after that, whether you're releasing it for any reason, right? Based on plans, right? So the idea is to just simplify, if nothing else happens here, even if they could at least make sure as part of this, what's moving forward here, they could essentially simplify your process such that applicants, it's not this question of whether the applicants give you plans at a later point, they just give them up front as part of the application before you, right? There's none of this sort of confusion about when do they give those things to you, when you have them. It's all given up front. And then, just as now, your first step is always looking and determining whether or not it's preferably preserved. You don't talk about significance, it's already defined for you. And you go right to, is it perfectly preserved? And in determining.
And it's getting rid of the considered for preservation.
Correct. Which it's very confusing, I think.
Which I think the definition is like almost lacking if at all in the ordinance of what it is.
What considered for.
Yeah, what considered for preservation means.
That evaluation really is, it's not even necessary, right? You could go right to, is it properly preserved and there's a delay. So what we're proposing here, and I could go through the markup of the ordinance, it's shown there in a whole bunch of color-coded word markup with side comments and so forth in the document the council's working with because they're amending it in committee. But the idea here is that they incorporate the changes we've asked, and the sponsors were nice enough to incorporate those as part of the amendment moving forward. Irrespective of where they land on any of the other details, obviously, there's a bigger policy level question that's put in there, right? We're hoping that they will include or pass the procedural change that will make your process a lot saner and simpler going forward. So you're just determining whether it's properly preserved, you're closing the delay, and then you go to whether you're removing it for any reason as part of your plan review. Not having to fumble around with whether it's considered for preservation or properly, all this back and forth over that. It's always caused problems. And I think that'll be a lot easier for you. And this diagram is basically meant to replace that if this happens.
So like,
So we will see the plans first.
It would be, even though you would have to first determine whether it's properly preserved, right, before you start reviewing the plans and having the more detailed evaluation, whether to release the delay based on those plans.
Right.
You get all that up front, and you're not having this question about like, well, do we see those plans? It just,
It's better.
as we've seen, a lot of people are just trying to do the same night anyway. So it seems kind of nonsensical to just create all that extra process and confusion. Just have everybody submit the stuff at the beginning. They're gonna need those plans anyway to get through a permitting process to build something. So just have that stuff up front and then go into that process there. Again, there's pros and cons to any process here, but we feel like this will make everybody's life a lot easier.
so for example, this, if it was like this now, this Murphy Ave one, we would just have the one vote would be. Where the motion would be it's preferably preserved, and that would, if we voted like we voted tonight, that would be turned down.
Correct.
And.
And I'm getting it, right, whereas if you impose it, and I obviously, you know, when you're making your decision, presumably you're sort of creating a nexus there, right, whatever your rationale is for determining, you know that. But yes, that's correct, if you were to impose it, then you're into the process of reviewing something.
Andy, who put this together?
Well, we worked on the process, but the staff, Diane in our office and Caitlin and Jennifer, our zoning administrator, because we all work at the processes together, we formulated this and working with the sponsors, the text of the amendment. So I have to credit Diane and Jennifer and Caitlin working on this particular, this was I think it was like a PowerPoint I worked on like years ago and from the original diagram, and we're just basically trying to simplify that. So we're using the same PowerPoint flowchart to update it here. And so I have to credit them with doing this in that tweak to the document.
And what do you think the chances of the council approving this?
I do, well, again, I can't speak for the council of the body, but I do think there's a good chance that they will approve the procedural stuff. I can't speak to the other aspects of those. Obviously, I don't think it was likely there was gonna be a 3-year vote, and I think that's why we see this, even the sponsors are sort of bringing that back to a 2-year discussion. It might be more of a discussion between the year, 18 months and 2 years. Obviously, that's the bigger substantive thing, but I do think there's a good chance everybody can stay on track and recognize that parsing this off separately, this is a totally separate matter, which is just making everybody's life cleaner and simpler, you know?
This literally,
What about?
answers what I was asking for earlier.
That would still be there, right here.
No, I'm asking, as far as the ordinance is concerned.
Yeah.
Input from the commission, because we are at times confused.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it would be great, I'll leave it to you, it's one of those things I'll probably share. If you want to, I'm sorry, I should have clarified that,
Encourage them to.
they are discussing some zoning amendments, we might know there's some other related zoning ones or quasi-related zoning ones that are going on in the city. They're discussing those on the 15th, but the 21st, which is the next planning and development meeting of the city council. If you wanted to go to that meeting or comment and so forth, we understand they're gonna pick up that discussion at that next meeting they're having. So if you look at the city calendar, you go in person or Zoom, whatever. You may decide, or you may want to authorize the chair or whatever, you know, maybe that's something you want to comment on in some way so that the council knows that this body, one or the other, feels this way or that way about this aspect of it, whether it's the procedural stuff or the time frame or anything else. If you see it as beneficial, you know, certainly chime in.
I'm most likely to be, to that number then. Definitely, maybe.
I think
It's
important that we've always started.
Yeah, I mean, this would have solved a bunch of problems. But
Long
that's a
time
real
ago.
contentious meeting
I
we
agree.
had, like this,
Agree.
because all the people who were mad were because they didn't understand that they didn't get to
Process.
speak, which is why I brought it up on this meeting today again. And, yeah, so that, yeah, thank you for
If I
doing this.
could,
Yeah.
I agree with that, with one little caveat, if I could, just for clarity, just to help if it all, and Caitlin, jump in here if you think I'm missing anything, you want to add anything. With the one caveat that you might still as chair want to clarify as you're going into these things at the meetings, the fact that you wouldn't necessarily be reviewing the plans and having that large discussion unless you make that vote that it's to be preserved, right? So I just put that only because you might still be in meetings in which folks are showing up because we have tried historically and we do now. We advertise and we set the meeting up so you can roll from one step right into the other the same night. But that's actually, you still need to do that step of determining it's perfectly preserved, right, before you go into that. So you may still as chair and as a commission want to make sure the public is aware, just so you know, this is how we run our meeting, you know, if we get to that point, you'll be able to talk, right, and sort of chime in on that. And so they're not misunderstanding that they might not be able to, if you determine it's not historically significant, if that makes sense, and Caitlin, I don't think we'll jump in.
I do see one change here that's pretty significant, because right before vote one perfectly preserved, it says, NHC will hold a public hearing and we'll hear public comment. But that's even before that vote on perfectly preserved. Now, it does say it's on whether the structures is to be perfectly preserved. So in theory, they should limit their comments to like, did George Washington sleep there or not type of thing.
In the first part, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, and in the
before
second
vote.
part, they would then be talking
So
about.
they could still be
the plan.
pissed off if they were annoyed that they don't want a big parking lot, you know, but that's, but we.
Yeah, and you might effectively be saying, this is for this limited part of the, you
Yeah.
know, this is our jurisdiction at this time or in the first part of the meeting. Then that becomes our jurisdiction if we get there.
And I know both Biff and I, historically, we've allowed public comment on before that initial vote if we knew that it was gonna
Right.
happen, but it wasn't really required. It sounds like, do you know if the text is gonna change to like make it a requirement to have an actual, a public hearing on that perfectly preserved?
Yeah, the assumption here is you're gonna be allowed to, and, you know, potentially take a look on that he's there, yeah.
Interesting.
But again, it's usually the plan, or I think the hardest part that I've seen here discussed here is just that the desire to look at the plans or the focus on what is being proposed in that case, you know?
Yeah. There's usually not too much controversy over the significance.
Yeah. So anyway, that's, yeah, I think it's the only, key update I think that we wanted to offer, and if you want to chime in on that process or attend the meetings, or even, you know, you can, you know, you don't have to go through it here now, but on that webpage with the committee's process, and especially if they decide to edit or amend things moving forward, the markup that was reviewed on April 7th, this Tuesday night, is there posted on the website. You can see, the black and white is just showing the text as it's being amended, but the colored red font and whatnot, the sidebar comments, this is all the stuff that's been discussed in this week as amended in committee. These are the other adjustments that have been made since this first sponsored. And so if you read through this and you see, all right, this word's been straight, if you read through just the stuff that's still there, so effectively without the markups, without the, you know, deletions, that is what the language would look like for you, you know, sort of clean in the end. We have to track, see where they go with the edits, and at the end of the day, we'll have a clean document, but this is showing in the markup of what they've been doing in committee.
What does it mean if it's just highlighted in pink there or whatever?
So in this case, that pink highlight for this entire paragraph is then, you can see the dotted line here maybe, but that's calling out, this comment on the side is calling out that entire paragraph as a comment.
Okay.
So in some cases, you're seeing markup, that the black is basically the sort of original or underlying, you know, stuff.
Right.
This other stuff, the red, you know, this blue, this is stuff that's been added essentially in committee, right? It's in Word, it's not, it's a different form of markup. And in some cases, there's a reason for clarifying something with a call out, so we put a sidebar, this is my markup on this, but that's why it says AP for any court, but it's commented, I just put a comment clarifying what's going on there for some reason, you know, I'm feeling like it might deserve some clarification or needed it or whatever. So again, this is just our take on how it might help your process moving forward, in addition to anything else about the policy level stuff. There is one typo in this, I wouldn't worry too much about it, we'll clarify with the sponsors, and it's actually my mistake, but when I was doing some of the markup, but here where it says the commission's going to notify the building commissioner of its receipt of the determination. Well, it's actually issuance of the determination. It's you're issuing the determination, you're not receiving your own determination. So that was just a little typo. If you come across that and you're like, why are we receiving our own? That's actually just because the word issuance is supposed to be in there, and it was a little bit of confusion when we were doing the market and whatnot. So that'll be cleaned up, you know, before this thing is moving ahead and adopted, but just in case you bump into it. Thank you.
Were there any extensions of some, I know there was discussion at one point of giving the commissioner a bit more time on some of the deadlines, you know if any of that's in there?
Yeah, you have some more, time, I forget the.
Yeah, I
forgive me for not
don't need to
recalling
know all the nitty gritty, I just wonder if that's still in there.
Yeah, no, we addressed, some of that, or review procedures, Oh, yeah, termination within 30 days. Issuance.
I don't think we changed timeframes.
Within 30 days of receipt. Yeah, okay, yep.
That's the same.
Yeah, same as
Yeah.
before, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I feel like there was something else in here that was problematic. Sorry, forgive me, I'm looking around, but yeah, that part stayed the same, but I think there was another one that was an issue.
And so there were timeframes in, not this ordinance, but in like the PCOD and there were timeframes
Yeah.
around the advisory reports and all.
Yeah,
that.
maybe for a moment I'm matching those together.
Anyway,
Sorry,
didn't mean to.
So this, yeah, so 60 days after demolition permit. Okay, yeah, so again, 30 days, so you got that, yeah. Anyway, again, if you see something in here, even, irrespective of the market and, suggestions we made, if you're seeing something, let us know if there's something you feel like could be improved, we can let the sponsors know, or you can let the sponsors know, we try to track and work with them on this piece here. But obviously, if you're seeing something that you feel like is missed by anybody, or you wanna, comment on otherwise, that's, your prerogative, so, and we'd wanna know too, because if we miss something and we can improve something, we'd like to take it into account too, so.
All right, thank you. No other comments? Questions? Sure.
Is there, somebody mentioned with other Form Bs, is there still that CPA money floating around for survey?
Yeah, a quick synopsis is not gonna be enough to do the scope of what I think is it contemplated here, I think, and it partly goes back to this commission, counselors, there's like how wide the scope goes and what it's covering, but if the scope is revisiting all the forms that are there today, or it's going out and looking at other structures, or, range and whatnot, that, I think the assumption there is that's a much larger, project. And so part of it might be discussion about, depending on where the funds are coming from, if it's city or private funds or whatnot.
To get those things written up, is there a legal requirement of like who writes them up? Like, does it have to?
I'm not aware of any particular, I mean, certainly it would be helpful to have somebody who has the historical background.
Well, right, but I'm just
But
wondering
there
if
isn't
there's,
anything specifically that says,
I just feel like there's enough folks in town, like myself included, like I wrote a Form B kind of for my own house, just for fun.
Yeah,
And like, if we employed some free labor to get a bunch
Well,
of,
the Mass Historical Commission accept it and all that.
no, I literally just made it for my own use. Or if it ever needed, one, I could submit it. But it's not old enough unless we change the laws. But no, I was just thinking, like, I think there's a lot of folks that are talented enough that actually could do the research and might want to volunteer their time if we could get some Form Bs created that way.
I think, well, I remember looking into that at one point, that there are standards. But I think the Mass Historic, like these, I don't recall that you had any special certification in there.
That's what I was curious, like, yeah.
But there's certain requirements, like the pictures have to be.
Well, right.
Black and white.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like if someone like myself were to be able to put all that together, just like they ask.
Like I know,
I'm not volunteering like that.
Attorney Mead has hired some just local historian-ish person to do some, they amended some or augmented some existing Form Bs.
Oh, they have, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they added some additional information. So.
I'm just curious about it, because like there's the whole late of ones that were done in 1980.
Yeah.
And then they did a bunch more like around 2000.
Other than.
And then that's the only ones I ever seen. Anyways, one comment. Yes.
Speaking of Form Bs, coming up Tuesday is the ZBA appeal, I hear the appeal on the minor contributing zoning for 9 Center Street. That's been appealed. You guys remember 9 Center Street?
Yeah.
how it was considered minor contributing, which is why they're gonna do what they're gonna do. Cause that has been appealed and
By whom?
it's going, Stephanie Nekitish. And it's coming up in front of the ZBA this coming Tuesday.
So her appeal is to say no, because it is minor contributing, it should be fall, right, considered contributing.
How did we vote on that one? I remember.
Well, because we couldn't,
Yeah.
because it, right,
Because why?
because it,
because of the problem here is, and I know with due respect to that, and with respect to where you fall on the spectrum. The ordinance today, puts the quotation marks around the word contributory. And the ordinance points to the inventory forms, and the inventory form starts with a cover page that says there are 3 categories. Contributory, not, minor contributing, right, and intrusion. And because it gives those 3 categories, when the zoning ordinance is pointing to it and saying it's the contributing or contributory grouping, it looks as if it's only that one of the 3 categories. It doesn't say minor contributing. And, you know, I think Stephanie correctly pointed out that maybe other places, there's not this sort of distinction being made to major, minor, whatever. But unfortunately, that is how it's written today. So that's the zoning administrator's application of the ordinance. So I don't think the zoning administrator was wrong in that determination of the ordinance. I'll leave that to the appeal process. But all that being said, in my view, it made sense, and I think we're gonna be talking about the ZBA about it. It probably makes sense for them to, maybe I hope in the hearing, but continue that matter. Because the council, the way the zoning works is the council is gonna determine what happens with this minor change, this minor contributing thing. And if they very well just say, we're adopting it, and it's clarified that both minor and contributor are qualify, then this becomes a moot point, because retroactively at the time from that adoption, this application is a certain, is taken up in that. So for all intents and purposes, we've already talked with the applicant about the fact that we might as well sort of plan possibly for that path. And the ZBA, well, they have to take up the appeal. It doesn't necessarily serve everybody a whole lot of, benefit to do all that process. And in a couple of weeks, we're gonna know it's definitively going to affect that one anyway as a contributing and therefore triggering in that way, the ordinance, if that makes any sense. And
So Chris, what does it stand right now?
I think it's Tuesday, I believe.
So it's still alive, it's still active
What?
at the 99 Center Street.
Yeah. It's actually, it's on our next agenda, isn't it?
so we'll leave it for Tuesday.
9 Center Street? I think it's coming up again in 2 weeks.
They will be coming back at some point,
Yeah.
I think with different plans. Yeah.
So.
Keep it out, I looked at that one carefully, that's that's a classic case of. If you take that down, just. Becoming a Disney World,
Yeah.
The Rose
absolutely
Compass right
nothing
next
wrong,
door.
what's that?
With the Rose Compass Federalist right next door.
Yeah.
That was built in 1982, I think. There's a Federalist right kind of in back of it.
Yeah.
It's not a real one. Looks real, but it's tricky ones.
all right, anything else?
Moving right along.
Yes, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Second motion.
Who gave the motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Well, for the record, who did give the motion?
I'll make the motion to
Okay,
adjourn.
and all in favor?
Mark.
Aye.
I'm preemptively second.
All against?
None.
That motion passes.
Yeah.
We are adjourned.
Good night, all.